It corresponds with a $2.2 billion TV rights deal the WNBA signed for 2026 that covers the next 11 years, which ESPN reports will increase the league's annual revenue by about $200 million a season. Yet, WNBA players say they're not being paid what they're owed. Right now, they get less than 10% of the league's total revenue, a strikingly slim margin when compared to other pro sports leagues in which athletes typically split revenues about 50-50.
Let's get honest for a second. All right, it's time to break this down. 0.5 input paragraphs equal 5 output paragraphs, and mixing them together. No cutting them apart. Just straight up, powerful voiceover content, exactly the way you want it.
In the past 6 months, all we have been hearing about is how the WNBA is having a record-breaking event after another, and yet not paying its players a fair salary. The simple answer is the league is just not making enough money. And it's basically just been trying to stay afloat all these years. Well, until the $2.2 billion media rights deal it signed with Disney, Amazon Prime, and NBC just a couple of months ago. And of course, the announcement of the 3 new teams that will be added to the league in the next few years. That will all flush the WNBA with much needed cash. This, of course, coincides with the collective bargaining agreement that will be negotiated after the 2025 season. CNBC dug into the nuances of the league's business model to really see how likely it is that the salaries will match up to the influx of the cash in the next few years.
The WNBA really wants us to believe they've pulled off the biggest trick in the book. According to them, ratings are skyrocketing, sponsors can't wait to throw money their way, and suddenly the whole world is obsessed with women's basketball. But here's the catch. Behind the curtain, they've been playing a sneaky game with the real numbers. And when Caitlin Clark went down with that injury, the whole illusion completely unraveled. So tell me, who's actually buying into this story?
$2 billion media rights deal out there.
There's rumor of it?
Reporting about the next media rights deal.
Then if I'm not great with numbers, low ball.
Why do you say that?
That's a low ball. You're saying how much?
2.2 billion over 11
Not
years.
enough. Not even close. Now, I'm not trying to inflate it a whole lot, but a 2's nice. An 8 would be better. That's what I'm talking about, because they know. They know. And we certainly have come a long way.
Let's be real. If the WNBA has perfected anything, it's the art of making things look way shinier than they actually are. Lately, they've been hyping up this so-called success story, waving around ratings boosts, bragging about packed arenas, and acting like their financial future is locked in. But once you start peeling back the layers, the numbers just don't add up. And then came Caitlin Clark's injury, the ultimate stress test that exposed what was really happening behind the curtain.
WNBA players want as much money as the NBA players. So the NBA actually generates extreme amounts of revenue. Somebody wrote a joke about it. The WNBA wanted what their just pay was, and so they owe $400 million because that's really how it balances out. It's like a losing. It's never been profitable.
The WNBA won't stop bragging about that shiny $2.2 billion TV rights deal set to start in 2026. They want you to believe ESPN, CBS, ABC, and the rest were begging to throw billions at the hottest league in America. But here's the reality. This wasn't earned. Adam Silver and the NBA muscled networks into it. It's a bundle deal. If you want NBA games, you're forced to take WNBA games too. That's not market success. It's like being told you can't buy Wi-Fi without also paying for a landline you'll never use. And yet, the WNBA parades around like it's proof of unstoppable growth. In truth, the league survives entirely on the NBA's bankroll. That $200 million a season isn't revenue, it's a subsidy. Still, players act like it's their golden ticket, demanding salaries double or even triple. They love to point out NBA players get about 50% of league revenue, while they get less than 10%. Sounds unfair until you remember. The WNBA doesn't generate profits. None. They lose money every single year, and the NBA covers the shortfall, demanding half the revenue when the number's negative. Good luck cashing that check. But of course, politicians dived right in. The Democratic Women's Caucus even pressured the league for a fair CBA, as if WNBA players were coal miners underpaid for dangerous labor. In reality, they're athletes in a league that couldn't survive a single month without NBA welfare. Yet somehow, Congress treats them like victims of systemic oppression. Now, let's look at ratings because this is where the truth really bites. The WNBA swore Caitlin Clark wasn't carrying the league, that stars across the board would keep viewers tuned in. But when Clark got injured, the numbers exposed everything. They bragged about 969,000 average viewers across ABC, ESPN, CBS, and ION, the most since 1998. Sounds impressive until you separate Clark from the rest. With her, Indiana games hit 1.3 million on ION. Without her, barely 924,000. Across the league without Clark, just 505,000. On CBS, her games averaged 1.8 million. What about the rest of the WNBA? A pitiful 83,000. Same pattern on ABC and ESPN. Clark brought millions. Everyone else struggled to break six figures, and here's the kicker. Not all ratings were even reported. For ESPN and ABC games mysteriously had no data. Did ESPN lose the files? Did an intern misplace them? Or, more likely, did those games tank so badly that publishing the numbers would shatter the entire WNBA hype narrative? This isn't even the first time ESPN has forgotten ratings. Remember when Pat McAfee's show tanked? Poof, numbers vanished. Same playbook here. The WNBA keeps screaming about record growth, but the truth couldn't be clearer. Games that do well, they've got Caitlin Clark. Games that flop? Buried, ignored, or mysteriously never reported. Yet the league insists that star power is balanced. Balanced? That's like calling the Beatles just another garage band. And about attendance, 7 teams supposedly averaged over 10,000 fans. Sounds impressive until you look closer. The Minnesota Lynx, one of their flagship franchises, filled only half their arena on average. If this were any other business, it'd be labeled underperformance. But in WNBA land, mediocrity gets spun into a miracle, which is why Clark's injury was a nightmare. She isn't just a star, she's life support. Without her, ratings sink, crowds shrink, and the illusion of success cracks wide open. But instead of owning it, the WNBA launched a PR blitz. See? Ratings are still up without her. Except they're not. Strip away the spin, and all that's left is flat interest, compared to the surge she alone created. Players, meanwhile, treat this growth as payday, demanding charters, big contracts, and NBA-style revenue splits that literally don't exist. The product hasn't improved. The basketball is slow, the drama is louder than the play, and fans tune in for Clark or the circus, not the fundamentals. Which raises the real question. If Caitlin Clark never entered the league, what would the WNBA even be right now? Still bleeding money, begging the NBA for subsidies, and forgotten that that's the frustrating part. They're not just inflating numbers, they're rewriting their own survival story. They want casual fans to believe women's basketball has finally broken through. But the reality is fragile, artificial, and held together by one player's popularity. Without her, the whole house of cards collapses. Her injury doesn't doom the league tomorrow, but it does rip the mask off. The WNBA is still the same as always, dependent, subsidized, and desperate for outside validation. And yet, they keep spinning scraps into historic wins. Like bragging about the most watched season since 1998, conveniently forgetting that back then, people didn't have Netflix, TikTok, and 500 other options. It's like beating your high score in a video game you haven't played in 25 years. Impressive? Not really. Their 969,000 average viewers isn't groundbreaking. It's Shark Tank reruns on CNBC levels. Barely edging out 90 Day Fiancé isn't proof of a sports revolution. Then there's the Disney problem. For ESPN and ABC games, just missing ratings. Coincidence? Please. If those games had been hits, ESPN would have blasted it everywhere. The silence tells you everything. Fans deserve transparency, but instead they get spin. That's why people roll their eyes when the WNBA brags. It doesn't feel earned, it feels manufactured. And the numbers prove it. With Clark, ratings jump. Without her, they crash. She is the product, whether the league admits it or not. Pretending otherwise is like saying Jordan was just another bull, which leads to the bigger issue, sustainability. One season of hype isn't a foundation, it's a wave. And waves crash. Attendance outside Indiana is shaky. Sellouts are padded with free tickets, and TV ratings are dangerously tied to a single star. Networks won't bankroll charity programming forever. And yet, players see the $2.2 billion TV deal and assume it's payday. They want NBA-style splits, forgetting that this deal isn't real demand. It's a forced bundle courtesy of Adam Silver. If it were genuine, networks would have lined up years ago. Here's the cold math. The WNBA doesn't make profits, period. It survives on subsidies. Comparing their salaries to NBA players is like comparing a lemonade stand to Starbucks. When you point this out, suddenly you're anti-women. But it's not gender, it's maths. Money that doesn't exist can't be spent. End of story. Which brings us back to Clark's injury. This was the WNBA's chance to prove it wasn't a one-player league. Instead, the opposite happened. Ratings dipped, coverage slowed, and fans tuned out unless her name was attached. That's not a league. It's a circus tent held up by one pole. Knock the pole out and it all comes crashing down. And deep down they know it.